Is Silicon Valley finally starting to feel embarrassed about their embrace of Trump? Today's guest is Yoni Rechtman, venture capitalist at Slow Ventures and one of the spiciest up-and-coming voices in the tech community. We try to make sense of Silicon Valley's political psychotic break, dig into Slow Ventures' weird predictions about the future, including why they feel they need to own creators outright and not just their businesses, and finally, we talk about why they're betting that a parking lot company is the next AI juggernaut. This is the Newcomer Podcast. All right, welcome to the Newcomer Podcast. Yoni Rechtman, great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I feel like...
But a long time coming. I feel like maybe like two years too late, frankly.
Well, I was looking through and you have a how to work with me, and number 3 on it is like, give me visibility, give me promotion.
Yeah, to be clear, number 1 on it is courtside tickets to an NBA game. I have been brought to a Nets game, not yet to a Knicks game. Number 2 on it is bring me cool places. FJ Labs put me on a jet ski, which was great.
All right.
We've done a lot of business together since then. Number 3, podcast. Counts for something. When the Newcomer branded, suite at the Knicks happens, call me down.
That will be the next level. Yeah. So a lot to talk about. I mean, you were promoted to be a partner at Slow Ventures in October. One, I want to have you on because I was honestly thinking to myself, like this month, just like who's hustling right now? I'm like, who is like, it feels like people aren't like hungry. And I look at you and you're like, oh, you're really like making it right now. Like, I think you're someone who's making moves, thinking about what's happening in venture. So I wanted to talk to you about that and like what's going on. Slow is a firm that almost annoyingly wants to differentiate itself from everybody else. So it's like whatever everybody else thinks, we think the opposite, which Sam Lesson gets some credit for.
My partner Sam is certainly the spirit animal of the firm.
Who when I was at the information, worked out of his apartment, spent some time with him. Cool, but before we get into all that and like do our classic venture stuff, and I think everything you guys are deep in the creator economy, some of the AI roll-up themes, figuring out how to invest. Alongside of the foundation models or with all the funding flowing into the foundation models without that being your investment, we are going to talk politics first, which I don't know. Both comes naturally and not. So the political moment, obviously terrible, I guess we both agree. First, the murder of Renee Good, and then a second shooting that sort of broke our brains. Yeah. You tweeted
Alex Pretti.
Alex Pretti. Yes,
say his name.
Exactly.
We can say it was a murder.
Right. You tweeted, "Trump is unleashing brown shirts in our cities and murdering Americans in the streets. The silence, complicity, enthusiasm from our industry is appalling. No tax cut or M&A approval will ever be worth it, and no amount of campus protests or annoying HR meetings could ever equal it."
Yeah.
Well put.
I mean, I don't know if there's a question there, but like the reality on the ground feels very self-evident. I've had these conversations with people where they'll tell me like, well, like, Alex Pretti, he had a gun. He shouldn't have had a gun. He's a left-wing agitator. He's in this signal group. He shouldn't have. I can actually even accept all of those premises. I can accept the like legalistic arguments. I don't, but I could accept all of those arguments. The fact of the matter is so many things had to go so terribly wrong for this like overly militarized, poorly trained, poorly vetted paramilitary group to be conducting operations like that in an American city on a false premise. Like the specifics of what happened.
Right. I feel like we're being gaslit if we have to argue about it.
Yes.
It was terrible. Like these are guys wearing masks, pinning him down. They've taken his gun.
Yes.
They shoot him
10 times.
Many times.
I think they fired 10 times. I think they hit him 6 times.
And the guy is an ICU nurse. It literally a hero among us. So, so I don't think we need to get into the facts of that. Yeah. It's just, I want to talk about, like where...
Yeah. We want to talk about the venture capital of it all.
Exactly. Yeah. How the industry is processing it. I mean, my attitude in the newsletter was, when Trump got reelected was the classic, like, leopards are going to eat your face off sort of situation. I had Parker Conrad at Rippling, who's sort of another kindred spirit who's like, this is terrible, but I exist in the tech industry. Yeah. Nonetheless, being like, man, he said something like, I'm surrounded by a bunch of smart people who think this is going to be great, but it feels like no way. Yeah. It's insane. And so then I think, more left-wing members of tech community sort of like chilled out. I mean, my retweets, I would occasionally flare up, but for the most part, we tried to note in the newsletter, crazy moments, but not go wild. What's been your approach sort of in the give Trump a year to sort of see what this is?
I didn't give Trump a year. Yeah. I mean, I remember finding myself at a sort of tech event among some, really cool, fancy, interesting people shortly after the inauguration, and got into like a really heated argument about Doge. Which like that was the first thing. It was going to be the thing. And this is how we're going to bring tech into government, and we're going to take this like entrepreneurial mindset to government. And it was very clear to me that this was not a sincere effort, that this was not being undertaken with, seriousness. I do believe that there are like plenty of the people that volunteered for that effort and that mission, like wanted to contribute to the government in a serious way. And like were civically minded about it. But it was very clear from the onset to me that like all of that Trump 2 was going to be much worse than Trump 1. Any of the, guardrails and constraints and in Trump 1 were gone. My interest from, shortly after the election was, for one, trying to think about what can we do at a more like local level. I believe that, blue cities and states can either be a real like strong point for Democrats in the midterms and in 2028, or they can be an albatross around our necks. And so like when New York, California, et cetera, are like run well, thriving, flourishing, I think it's a huge benefit to our argument that like we actually can do this, and government can be a force for good in people's lives. And and I want
to get into New York and all that. What is your read on the political distribution among like the venture capital class?
I think that most venture capitalists are at this point amoral financiers. and I don't even mean that in any kind of disparaging way. Like I am, I'm like a very deep believer in property rights and the importance of markets.
Right.
And there are like a lot of things in the world that I look at with a relatively amoral lens. I think that first and foremost, venture capitalists sell money, and they sell money to whoever they can sell money to. And I don't think it's like I think it's a relatively amoral way of moving through the world. And to be clear, I'm saying amoral, not amoral. I don't think there's anything evil, but there's nothing inherently good either. I certainly believe that like entrepreneurial capitalism is the best form, is the best kind of market system to pair with liberal democracy to like achieve freedom and broad prosperity. And so in that way, I think it's like ultimately serving some good purpose. But like most of the people within it are, I went to Stanford, I went to Princeton, I worked at Morgan Stanley, I worked at Meta, I know a bunch of people, I did some angel investments, like, my dad ran the TMT desk at Goldman, like.
And so you do think like animating thing they didn't like about Biden, you mentioned in your tweet, like M&A, like blocking deals. There was also, the crypto angle.
I think crypto, they're just Lena Khan.
You're making it hard for me to make money. This is really annoying. I hate it.
Gary Gensler and Lena Khan, were, I think, legitimately like overzealous in a lot of ways and did a huge amount of like reputational damage pushing tech to the right. And then obviously now like more recently, some of this like cockamamie wealth tax idea in California is doing the same. And so much is, look, my critique about the culture in venture capital is the same about the investing culture as it is about the political culture, which is it's fundamentally like Momo driven. It's like,
what do you mean?
Momentum driven. I like to be on the winning side. I like to back winners. I like to find winners.
Right.
And like venture capitalists are always thinking about the world in terms of upside maximization, not looking stupid, job security, and, and like preserving optionality. And so when someone looks like they're winning, most venture capitalists will rush to back the winner. And that's just as true in politics as it is in their investing.
But it feels like the momentum is going to turn against Trump. I mean, he's polling.
Well, yeah, most venture capitalists are quite bad at predicting those wins, but
Yeah, it's always worrying. Do they think democracy itself will fail? Like, is it a prediction that there won't
I think
be
a lot of
election?
people. I think a lot of people don't take seriously the extent to which our system of entrepreneurial capitalism rests on strong institutions. And so what Trump is doing in our democracy, he is also doing to our market system.
Right.
And so, for instance, it should be extremely concerning to anyone who calls himself a capitalist to watch him start nationalizing companies, which is what he has done in the steel industry and in the chips industry, to watch him, try and not put pressure, criminally prosecute Jerome Powell to exert control. Central bank independence is one of the pillars.
And the idea that you could commit fraud, and probably if you can pull together a couple $1 million, you can get it to the Trump administration, and then you can get a pardon and get out of it.
And so there is no democracy without, I really believe that there is no, the systems of democracy, capitalism, property rights, institutions, an independent judiciary, these are all actually one thing. And in countries that have one, they generally tend to have all of them. And in countries where one fails, the rest fail shortly thereafter. He's doing third world, it's third world style corruption in the US, and is substantially undermining the excellence of American institutions and the excellence of American capitalism. And we are all going to wind up paying for that. So even in the most strictly amoral terms, if you don't care about any of the ideas about the liberal world order, we're going to wind up looking like Turkey or Argentina or Russia, where there is no, sort of free market, there is no meaningfully free market system, there is no central bank independence, there are no strong institutions, there is no, for the most part, judicial independence.
What do you make of
these
this
things all go
problem
together?
That, if you give Trump a golden crown or whatever, he's going to treat you well. And Democrats, if you try and do it, they might say, oh, look, a billionaire, we should tax you more. I'm not saying Democrats should get more corrupt, but there is this asymmetry where you get more out of cozying up to the Republicans as a business person.
Totally. I think that Democrats often really struggle to articulate a positive vision for America and the world. There's this Simpsons meme that people always share that is hysterical. And it's the Republican National Convention. And it says oh,
we're evil.
We're evil and we know it. And then the Democratic National Convention is we hate we're incompetent and we hate ourselves.
Right.
I think that Democrats really struggle because of how much they point out problems instead of being able to put forth a positive vision for America. I think it's really challenging to hold the two conflicting ideas in your head. I am, notwithstanding his personal proclivities, often very inspired by Bill Clinton and, his line, there's nothing that's wrong with America that can't be fixed with what's right with America. I believe that very deeply. I think the idea of...
I agree with everything you're saying. I just don't think it doesn't solve the corruption problem. Part of it is, I think, when Democrats are in power, they need to make sure you have severe consequences if you try to buy off the government. Totally. And it has to be, well, you're not allowed to do that. You can't have one party coming to power where you're allowed to sort of be pay to play and corrupt, and another party that says, we're the principled ones, but we don't have enough backbone to actually prosecute.
No, I mean, Democrats
crimes.
need to be more willing to wield power. I think, Merrick Garland is a coward and an embarrassment, an idiot for not, putting Trump in prison.
Tech is built on immigrants. Elon Musk himself is an immigrant. Many of these tech companies, have H-1B employees doing a lot of the most important work. Yet there's a strain that's obviously immigrants are the ones being attacked here, but there's also some of the leaders, XAI has tons of immigrants.
Yeah.
Elon is practically, a white nationalist at this point. I don't know. What do you make of the anti-immigrant sensibility?
But they won't go after the good ones.
That's
I think that's the cognitive dissonance of like, it's all happening somewhere else over there. It's abstract, it won't affect me. It won't affect the people in my life. And frankly, to some extent, it might be true. I mean, because of this system of crony capitalism that we're now in, and like really third world corruption that Trump has brought to America, it might be true that the people who cozy up to the administration will get to keep the visas for their employees.
But they're also not that competent, thankfully, I think. And so, I don't know. I just saw a tech person the other day who said, they tried to come back from the U.S. on an O1 visa and had gotten jerked around, and they're just like moving to London. It is like we're going to lose people who would be in Silicon Valley, even if, certain firms can get exceptions or special treatment from the administration.
It sort of reminds me, there's a real sort of dark potential here, which is kind of like perestroika, which is, could we be entering a period of like rapid sort of cronyism and privatization that leaves us overall a much poorer country and looking like Russia, with weak institutions, no judicial independence, no central bank independence, but oligarchs who have successfully, seized power based on their proximity to, this like fundamentally illegitimate government.
What's your view on how friendly everybody should be with each other on Twitter and in real life? What do we do? It feels like, okay, we're in this moment where both you and I sort of think, okay, we were right. All the the sky is falling about Trump really feels true. They are shooting people in the streets. Yeah. They have a Gestapo-like force. They have people literally cosplaying as Nazis. It is a dark moment. A lot of the things that if you had predicted that Trump would try to put tariffs on Europe to try and take Greenland from them, you would have been mocked before the election. So things I think are unambiguously worse than you could have really said without being laughed at before the election. So that's the world we find ourselves in. Yet I think we're so fatigued from woke cancel culture era of booing everybody. Where do we go? I guess to put a direct question to you, what's your view on this sort of no compelled speech, right? I said something snide about Gary Tan because he's always out there talking. Always out there talking. And I said, he's not saying anything on this. He used to be sort of a principled Democrat. And I said, power corrupts, I guess. And he's now blocked me on Twitter. And people accuse me of trying to compel speech. What's your view on this?
I really don't think anybody is required to have or share an opinion about anything or everything. I do think that when you have an opinion about everything except for one thing, right, that's a little bit different.
It stands out to people.
Yeah. So there are a lot of things that go on in the world that I just don't feel like it's necessary for me to express an opinion about. Frankly, I don't live in California. I don't want to get too deeply involved in California politics. So I mostly keep my mouth shut because it annoys me when people talk about New York politics and you don't have a stake in this. But when we're talking about America, we all have a stake in it. And there's a lot of people who I think have put themselves forward as not just business leaders, but moral leaders, who then exempt themselves from that responsibility in moments of moral crisis. So I don't think anyone is required to take up a mantle of moral leadership. I don't think anyone is required to be a public intellectual. If you want to be a public intellectual, if you want to, be a philosopher king, then what?
People are going to look to you for leadership. Yeah. And when there are moments of moral crisis and you don't offer anything, people are going to be like, oh, I thought you were a source of wisdom. Yeah. I agree with that take 100%. How much do you tell founders to pick their VCs based on their morals?
Not really at all, honestly. I think I think it's a lot easier for me to say a lot of this stuff as a venture capitalist. The job of a founder is just immensely more difficult. And I would love to be able to tell someone live your conscience in every way all the time. But I heard this once and it really stuck with me, is that all money is green and all money is red. It all spends and it all probably came from something a little bit dirty.
Right.
And ultimately at the end of the day, it's very difficult to like, whose money is it really? Frankly, it's like it's sitting in the startup's bank account, but it was put there by a venture capitalist who received it from some institution who received it from its donors. Like
some of these investors end up having leverage over you. I guess that would,
yeah.
I think, if it's a minority investor and you're just trying to raise money. Yeah. I mean, I tend to be on the sort of, when it comes to fundraising, pretty tolerant. I mean, I try to maintain and quote, and especially on deal type stories, talk to right-wing members of Silicon Valley. Like it is a funny role that I play where it's like, at once I have principles, but, they're part of the community and I'm, I want to be sort of a vehicle to keep the community together. And so they're a piece of it.
I would much rather be able to believe, and I do believe that like the tides will turn, than saying I'm going to like cut myself off from anybody who disagrees with me. That's sort of incompatible with a lot of my other values. And like, I have the privilege of being able to like speak about my opinions. And like, that is not everyone has that. I do, but I still do like have a responsibility to like my partners and my founders and our investors to like do the job that they're paying us for. And, I think if I were to just say like, fuck you to everyone I disagree with, that would be like a dereliction of my job.
Where do you think things are going?
I mean, look, Trump's going to make some noises to moderate ahead of the midterms. He will do that unsuccessfully, but potentially like a credulous national news media will applaud him for, firing Greg Bonvino, and that'll be that. But I think a lot of what's happening right now is, look, Trump was elected basically to do 4 or 5 things. America first. Well, he's bailing out foreign governments and getting into, illegal foreign wars. Reduce inflation. He's making energy prices go up, home prices go up. Not doing that. Close the border, send them all home. Well, he's just shooting Americans in the head and like rounding up children. Right. And hey, by the way, our deportation numbers are basically flat from Biden and Trump won.
And Obama was doing more.
Yeah, Obama was doing more. Drain the swamp. He's like actively taking bribes and bringing third world corruption and cronyism to America for the first time. So like
he's literally pardoning drug dealers and leaders of countries.
And then the fifth one is release the Epstein files, which he is actively
one of the main characters apparently.
Yes, one of the main characters and actively subverting that investigation. So if those are the 5 promises of Trump 2, he is failing on every single one of them in like really substantial and notable ways. I think he's going to get absolutely like drubbed in the midterms. I think he is going to I think his party is really going to pay for it in 2028. And my hope is that America can then begin the like long and hard process of rebuilding trust in government and rebuilding the institutions that have been like really, profoundly and severely damaged in even just the first year of his presidency.
You ended up supporting Mamdani.
I did.
I voted for him over Cuomo. I ranked him like 4 probably in the primary.
I think I ranked him 4 or 5 in the primary. I was
like Brad Lander.
We're both like Yimby.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Zellner was 1 or 2. I forget which exact. I think Brad, because it seemed like he was going to win, or he had the more momentum. So not that he was going to win, but
and
he was
Brad is also. I've met him a number of times. I grew up in Brooklyn, and have sort of known him, even if only peripherally, for a long time. I think he is we're not here to, this is deeper into New York politics than your audience probably wants to get, but like, I think Brad is like a really, really cool and like kind of beautiful soul. And
we talk about inside baseball stuff on this podcast.
Yeah. And if you want to get really, really inside baseball, the like single most personally moving thing to me in Judaism is this idea of like B'Tselem Elohim. We're all made in God's image. We share this kind of divine spark or, piece of divinity within ourselves. And anyway, something randomly former New York City controller Brad Lander talks about a lot. And he and I have talked about it and kind of bonded a little bit over that in passing various points. I think he's a really, really special person, and I'm excited to see what he does next.
But do you think, if Mamdani and AOC are the future of the Democratic Party?
I think they're the future of the Democratic Party in New York. And I think it's really, really important to like be able to meaningfully distinguish between like the bluest of blue states and the rest of the country. Like, I don't, John Fetterman is a Democrat. Like, Tim Kaine is a Democrat. Joe Manchin was a Democrat. Like, there are a lot of different flavors of Democrat around the country. I'm not really super convinced that the way to win is to like put forth figures like Mamdani and AOC on a national stage. I think they do really well in certain corridors. I think they have some good ideas. I think they have some really bad ideas. I don't think that is the future of the Democratic Party. I think that there are like, honestly, on some of the kind of bread and butter issues, I think that the left does the left of the Democratic Party just does a much better job of like talking about things and frankly the whole
affordability buzzword. Yeah,
affordability and like that, it then just becomes this question of like, do we see affordability through a supply side lens, which is more of the kind of like abundance and like YIMBY movement, or do we see affordability through more of the demand side lens, which is the historical Democratic approach of like subsidized demand and then watches prices spiral out of control? So the emerging Democratic consensus does actually, across the sort of range of Democrats, does seem to be more supply side or abundance oriented, which is really encouraging. I work in New York with a group called Abundance New York, who these guys are great. Shout out, Catherine and Ryder. And then nationally, I'm close with the people who run the Inclusive Abundance Initiative. I think there's like the whole idea of abundance politics can work really well. I think the language itself is very like elite coded and maybe not super transferable. Works better as affordability. Let's do more things and make things cheaper. But that to me is like the sort of positive vision of the future that the Democratic Party should be putting forward.
In California, I think Matt Mahan is now running for governor. People are clearly going to circle around him. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hope the Democrats don't mess it up. I think if it's abundance oriented, positive mindset, like just the California tax, while I'm fine with taxing billionaires, taxing unrealized gains is such a disaster that then having these taxes floated, even though I know it's sort of like, some union puts on some ballot initiative, but it really feels like it could plausibly pass in California. Stuff is hard to take.
I don't think it will pass, and I also don't think it would stand up to like a court challenge. But like, the like wealth tax idea in that way is really stupid. I think the like actually right way to do that is get rid of the step up in basis, which is basically like a reintroduction of the estate tax. And then the second thing is like come up with some,
ideally on a national level, so people aren't state shopping,
and do some approach to taxing the like buy, borrow, die strategy,
right? And then give people health care. I think if the tax is for something, it's easier to sell. Sometimes when Democrats are talking about it just as a tax without saying, this is the policy we want to pay for, it just feels sort of mean-spirited and anti-capitalist.
I mean, look, I think what's happened in New York is actually like a really encouraging version of what this could look like, which is New York introduced congestion pricing, which is functionally a consumption tax. Instead of talking about it as a victory of how much revenue we've generated, I think Kathy Hochul in particular has done a really good job of talking about the outcomes that it has achieved.
I was such a hater.
I know, me too.
She's so much better than I thought.
It's like crazy.
It's like, oh yeah, just wait until after the election, do it in a much more politically palatable way. Get some seats for Democrats. She's totally right.
She's a badass.
She's a political.
It's not my vibe and aesthetic, but she's fucking knocking it out of the park. And part of it is she has been very, very, she's had a really hardcore message discipline about not talking about how much money they've raised, but instead talking about the outcomes and what they're spending the money on, which is improvements to the subway system. And hey, look at all of the outcomes we're achieving in terms of shorter commute times and lower air pollution and less noise pollution and, more shoppers on the street. And, all of these things are awesome and real and we have proof of. And like, it is just, that is a positive way of talking about government intervention that is like exciting, and you make a case for how you're going to make people's lives better instead of making a case about how you're going to make their enemies' lives worse.
All right. So talking about the business of venture capital, talk a little bit.
Oh, that?
Yeah, our job, your job and my sort of the main thing I write about.
I think probably like all of, the rest of my team is,
they're skipping to this moment.
Yeah, they're like, oh, thank fucking God, he's done.
We'll have a little link where people can just join us. They're done with politics. Talk about business.
Yoni and Eric living out for 20 minutes.
Give us your articulation in classic, spicy, slow fashion of what slow venture philosophy is.
Yeah, well, look, we are a very decentralized partnership. So it's 4 partners investing in the seed fund. And I think it's like 80% alignment, with the last 20% being language. What I always say is like, we need to find really awesome people with weird takes on important stories. And that's it. The really awesome people thing is like self-evident. We talk about what awesome people look like, what really, really exceptional people look like. But by and large, everyone buys the premise. You need awesome people. I think where most people in venture get wrong is they just look for really cool stories. And they forget the second part of it, which is like weird takes they're on. So my belief very deeply is that we need to find things that are a little bit like off kilter, out of center, non-obvious, non-consensus. Basically, you need things that are like unique inputs to achieve unique N of 1 outputs. And like, that's it. That's the entire business. There's nothing else. If you believe in power laws, like, don't invest in things that are obvious or same. So I am a generalist. I think I can find those kinds of weird takes and important stories in a lot of different places, but really try and like constrain myself to companies that can sort of be articulated through these like big if true statements, or really feel like when you first hear it, you're like, that's fucking stupid. And then if you think about it for a little while longer, it kind of it grows on you. There's a creeping realization.
So how do you invest around AI?
Yeah.
Are you in foundation models?
No.
Okay.
No, we're not in any
big
foundation
mistake.
What? What?
That's a big mistake on some level. All right.
On some level, yeah, we probably should have done it. It's a great trade. We should have done it and sold, and we could have, whatever. We didn't. Sometimes maybe we're a little bit too like honest and principled for our own good. And if we see something that we think doesn't make sense, we just don't do it. But no, we're not in any foundation models. So I am at this point much more interested in the like second order effects of AI. So rather than saying like, how do we like max tokens? What happens after we do? Let's just like accept as a general premise that like, yeah, it's like, this is a real thing. It's going to keep getting better. It's going to wind up in more parts of the economy, like not without some pain and struggle and strife, but like it's going to wind up in more parts of the economy. What happens then? And I think, to my point on like, okay, the like improvement and deployment of AI is a really important story. Like, but the most basic version of that is like, well, I'm just going to make the capabilities better. I think that's the wrong approach. I think honestly already at this point, we're on the wrong side of some scaling laws around this, where like, and frankly, a lot of even feels unnecessary. I think that all of the model development could stop tomorrow, and we would have like 10 or 15 or 25 years of really big, important work in front of us. And we have some evidence for that, which is that like, we're still like the whole economy is still in the move to the cloud, like 25 years later, so this is not going to happen overnight. But like, what are then the things that only make sense or only possible in that world? What are either the types of problems that AI creates and new businesses will need to solve, or the types of opportunities that only become available once like the capabilities have gotten there?
So give me some examples.
Sure. So I think throughout, like, probably the number one feature of like what AI is really good at is inverting any kind of system that relies on like scarce production and abundant attention. So like things like writing, phone calls, hiring, coding, all of these are things which previously we had pretty like limited ability to produce. You could only make so many phone calls. You could only write so many lines of code. And we have entire social systems built on the fact that you have like effectively unlimited bandwidth to like review and process those things that have happened, those things that have been produced. That is very obviously reversed. So like, what are some of the consequences of that? Well, like everything is slop now. Like, sure, yes, but specifically, like, even as the amount of code getting generated is going up in large organizations, large companies, velocity is going down because now code review has become this like unbelievable bottleneck. And like all of our system of
every AI hater is just going to be like, oh, they're pumping out tons of words, but it's not valuable. It's creating problems
when
for them.
When it's like free to produce code, you produce more code, but it's not free to review that code. So like, I think Git is like really, really structurally challenged, and GitHub is, in this weird moment where they're like basically all the good talent is left and they're in this feature freeze, and GitLab is like sort of perpetually on the verge.
Do you have a bet in this space?
Of course.
What is it?
Yeah. So we backed this business called Atomic, which rather than trying to be like this layer between Git and, the LLMs or something like that, which a lot of people are working on, they want to just be an entirely new, replacement for Git. So like exist, down here. And we've seen this happen before. You used to have centralized version control systems. And then sort of the advent of like open source and specifically Linux, like broke that open. Like none of those centralized version control systems could manage it. Linus Torvald created Git, and we have this like, an unbelievable amount of enterprise value created off of the back of that. Well, that's 20 years ago. It seems unlikely to me that Git is going to really survive like code gen and LLM assisted software development for the next 20 years.
One approach that has taken venture capital by storm, and you guys were early on it, but are also passionate, is this roll-up idea. Take some old world business, give it AI, make a bunch of money. What is Slow doing?
Easy. 3 steps.
What is Slow's approach, and what's your view of sort of venture capital embracing this philosophy? So this is what we internally refer to as a GBO, or growth by buyout. We've been doing this for a long time, since well before I joined the firm. The first kind of canonical example of this that we have is our business Metropolis. Metropolis started off as software for parking lots. They eventually wound up raising $100 million, buying a parking lot operator, installing their software, making that business way more profitable. They then raised another, I think, $1.5 billion, bought the biggest public company in their space, took it private, did the same thing. They recently announced that they raised another, I think, $4 billion. AI for parking lots, just to underline that.
AI for parking lots. I think
it's doing well.
They just raised, I think, another $4 billion, 4, 5, 6. Who's to say?
And the idea is just like computer vision. The monitoring is much easier now.
They basically run these parking lots now entirely autonomously, and they monetize the payments and
harder to not pay.
Yeah. And so the basic idea in all of this stuff, in our view, is that there's a lot of markets that are screaming out for like software or AI, but are like fundamentally unsound places to build a business selling it. So rather than trying to invest a ton in sales and marketing to bring this product to market that nobody wants, to win a very, very small amount of budget, in each one of these customers, like, why don't you just go, if the economics are transformational enough, just go and buy the business, transform it yourself, own all the upside, and compete on the basis of technology using M&A as a go-to-market motion. So this is, I think, where this is very different than private equity, where our view is really trying to be laser focused on product, not process. So we meet a lot of people who will say like, well, I'm just like really smart. I went to this school. I did this thing. Like, we're just going to be really good asset owners here. And I think that is an awesome private equity approach that is actually going to perform really well in this moment. Where we're going to know how to use these tools the best. We're going to integrate them the best. But it's not necessarily built for scale or built for repeatability or built for defensibility. So we're very interested in these opportunities where we can underwrite a product team to go and really validate some kind of economically transformational product in a market that we think will support this kind of motion. But, you could envision buying a professional services firm, that has call it 10 or 15% EBITDA margins. And if you've built a product that you think transforms that into a, call it 30 or 40% EBITDA business, like that is huge value creation for yourself, obviously. It also means that you can afford to buy these businesses like much more aggressively. Like you're maybe not quite as sensitive on entry price. Like maybe you can pay, 11 times instead of 10 times earnings, something like that. So you have your pick of the litter on which business you want to buy. And if you can go and start buying increasingly large businesses over time, as Metropolis has done, you have a chance to, within a relatively short amount of time, own this like huge cash flow generating, really, really like unique asset and just like run it forever and take it public. And so we're not interested in these opportunities to say like, we're going to go and fix a broken business and like modernize it. And, we really want to think about, and this is, I think, why it really is fundamentally venture, is like be very, very focused on the upside that we can create in these businesses rather than thinking about how we can make money through, financial engineering or turnarounds or any of that. It's just a different go-to-market for software instead of some different business model for us.
But all the competition for these businesses has got to drive you crazy, right? Now there's all this money pouring in. So every strategy is going to have, all of a sudden, if you have a dry cleaning business, you have all these VCs saying, I need that company. We're going to bring AI to it.
So I think the answer, just like anything else, is it means you have to be willing. Like a few years ago, it was unconventional enough to even be thinking about this strategy that like that alone was the off-kilter, unique kind of N of one approach. I think today we just need to be looking in weirder places. I think we need to be looking at like weirder types of teams. I think we need to be looking at them earlier, different kinds of interventions, different kinds of product approaches. But it's just it's the same. It's like
private equity at least respects expertise in the domain.
Yeah.
Whereas venture capital often scoffs at the people who have been running the dry cleaning business or whatever, and then they don't understand sort of the particular things that make a business succeed or fail.
So I don't know if I agree with that premise, honestly. I think that if you're coming in to sell software to that, I mean, look, let's use like real examples here. If you're coming in and you're like building Toast for, SMBs and restaurants and stuff, and you don't have like
Toast, the payments processor.
Yeah. Toast, the like,
right.
Yeah. And you don't have like a ton of respect for your customers and you're not like really willing to listen to them and understand them. And you're like, they're not going to buy your product. It's not going to work. You're going to build the wrong thing. Like, I don't think that it's unique to this instance to say that you need to like, if you think about these companies that you're acquiring, if you think about them as your customers and your partners.
You're just saying any successful entrepreneur needs to be empathetic to their, but it's just easier if you've grown up in the bit where it's, I'm in media.
Yeah.
You watch people get into media sometimes.
Yeah, and famously,
and you're like, you don't know any of the
famously,
pitfalls.
Private equity is extremely respectful when they go in and buy media companies.
Right.
Like,
but those strategies are just like, burn them and take the profits as we can. But whenever somebody says, I'm not from media, but I'm a smart guy, I'm going to like really reinvent it, it doesn't usually work.
I mean, this is one of the reasons why we tell people build, then buy. Like, don't start the business and immediately go.
So become that thing. Like, do a version of it
first.
first.
Well, what I mean is like, go and service them as customers first. Build a product that is like really good and transformational to them first. Frankly, it's a lot cheaper to build software than it is to go and buy a business, especially today. So you should be able to test and validate that what you've built actually like justifies going and raising a bunch of money to buy these assets. And in the doing, you're going to learn a lot about the like customers and partners that you're serving. So I just don't, I think it's a different go-to-market, but I don't think that it is exempt from the same kinds of like basic physics of business building, which is like, customer centricity and like deep respect and interest in solving problems for them.
If you had to bet on one other investment firm doing roll-ups, who would it be?
I think to some extent, it might just be like, look, the whole collection of like kind of what I would call bulge bracket venture is doing this well. They're taking a very different approach to this than we are, which usually starts with capital rather than starting with a product. I don't think it's wrong. I think it will trend towards a very different kind of outcome. But like every one of the like, mega funds, which they increasingly look indistinguishable from the mega private equity funds and even the mega hedge funds, they all have teams now focused on this. I don't think that they will be wrong. I just think that they will wind up selecting for different kinds of people and opportunities that we will, and they're going to capitalize them very differently. So one of the reasons this whole idea is so attractive to them is because it's an opportunity to go and like deploy Mondo dollars from day zero. That's not our approach. Our belief always is that like too much money too fast throttles progress, and like, you have an overstuffed pig and it dies. It allows a level of, poor discipline and loose thinking.
You've talked some about, king making in venture capital. It can work. I mean, if you throw enough. OpenAI right now is sort of proving a too big to fail strategy.
So yes, I think it's a question of when though, because like OpenAI was so profoundly non-consensus from its start. It wasn't even, let alone a C Corp, it wasn't a for-profit company. So it's all of this stuff looks like the present looks inevitable in retrospect. But the number of companies that are like wildly successful today that were deeply, deeply non-consensus at the time, OpenAI is actually a really good example of this, where like it was not an investable business at its inception. It wasn't an investable business for its first like 5 or 6 years. Anthropic, people thought was an insane thing to even attempt at the time. Cognition started as a video conferencing app. Clay wandered in the desert for like, 10 years. There's so many examples of this. And in retrospect, we all know what the chart looks like. And eventually the chart starts going crazy, and it was always going to happen, and it never could have gone any other way. Like each one of those are really, really, Ramp was like the stupid, everyone was like, what the hell are they doing? Don't they know about Brex? And like, it's sort of 5 times Brex now. So like these things always winners always look inevitable in retrospect. I just don't believe in that as the reality on the ground. And I think history largely proves me right. What the problem is with this whole sort of like idea of king making is it's not putting, this is going to be a overwrought metaphor. It's not putting a crown on the head of the crown prince upon the death of his father. It's like putting a crown on a baby out of the womb and believing that the crown itself confers legitimacy instead of the legitimacy conferring the crown. And in each one of those examples that I mentioned, those are businesses that now today like have unlimited access to capital and incredible talent, and everyone wants to work there. But, you're
rejecting what somebody was calling it like the coconut seed round, saying coconut rounds,
mango seed round,
whatever.
Yeah.
Is that's what you're sort of pushing back again? The sort of we're going to put so much capital into this business. It's a question of scale.
I think there are businesses that require a lot of capital up front, and like that's a ton of risk and power to you if you have the if you have the piggy bank to pull that off and the balls to do it, like good for you. I think that's different than saying by mere dint of putting a bunch of money into this company, we just know it will work. Like that's not true. I don't think there's any evidence in history to suggest that that's true.
You guys have had a very creative creator economy strategy.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam has been bullish on this idea of like, we need to invest in a person, not just a business, like get our talents into someone who's promising like now watch them go.
Is this when you ask us for money?
No, we're too far along.
But think about how much further along you could be with a couple $1 million for Newcomer.
How's that strategy going of investing in individuals?
So basically we have, in addition to our seed fund and our opportunity fund, we have a third vehicle, which is our creator fund. Which is a $65 million fund. And basically what it does is rather than investing in like consumer media brands or the companies started by creators, we're trying to make these like sort of, 360 deals with creators to just capitalize them for everything that they do. And we own our piece of
Who runs that fund?
So that's run by my partner, Megan, and Sam. Megan Lightcap is awesome. She came in to Slow at the same time I did to kind of figure out this and like really make it a thing, and it's going really well. The idea is basically that like in a world where, and I would put this under, by the way, like second order effects of AI, in a world in which like all of these kind of performance channels are getting really like clogged up, owned access and distribution is like a hugely valuable asset. And so rather than saying, hey, like we want to be media investors, we want to invest in media brands that can go and build really big businesses on top of them. And so there's a lot of like obvious places for this. You know, I think like Glossier honestly is a good example of this. It was started out of Into the Gloss, which was a blog that Emily Weiss started, and then like built this really big commerce company on the back of it. So like all of those kinds of consumer opportunities I think are fairly obvious. We backed this guy, Jonathan Katz-Moses, who's like a woodworking creator on YouTube, who's built this really successful like tools business. I think that these opportunities are also.
Do you bring in the entrepreneur, or is there somebody beside them to run the business, or are they?
It depends. I mean, in our view, he's the entrepreneur. Like, does he need someone to help him, like to help support him on, you know, maybe it's a president or something to help support him on the operations of the business? Totally. We can maybe help him with that, but it's largely on him. As ever, like we're money, you know, like we're money. We're willing to make bets that other people aren't willing to make.
It's like you run your business. Good luck.
Yeah. It's like, let's find incredible entrepreneurs. And we think we've found a whole new category of entrepreneurs that like the market doesn't yet really have a good way of backing.
But are we at peak creator yet? Or where do you think we are in this sort of arc of?
No, I mean, I think it feels very evident to me that that's just what the future of, I don't know, all media is. Like, I mean, we're seeing more and more companies adopt, like mature, large companies adopt strategies that look like that because they're finding that their performance channels just like don't work and they need some way to reach people and to talk to people. So this is very clearly like we've looked at any number of B2B companies doing like some version of this, and we're going to look at a lot more over time. I'm really bullish on the idea. We looked at healthcare companies. I'm really bullish on the idea that we're going to find these kinds of like creator-led opportunities horizontally, not merely within like, you know, consumer discretionary categories.
Yeah, running a newsletter can definitely feel like running a marketing channel without a product. I mean, thankfully, our events business has delivered on like, oh, that's something that people just don't love paying for content. I know, you know, obviously Sam is married to Jessica Lesson, who I work for, and really believes in subscription. Even she has, you know, expanded the business beyond just subscription. Yeah. But I just think, as much as, you know, I love our subscribers and think it's a cornerstone of Newcomer's business.
And yet you never say thank you to me. I'd be willing. I'd be curious to go back. Like, where am I?
What number subscriber?
I bet
pretty early?
I couldn't be. I must be a triple digit subscriber. I might even be a double digit subscriber.
I can try to check.
Paid? I bet.
I mean, I just think people don't like paying for media. Yeah. You know, they have this feeling that quality content will just get to them.
Yeah.
And so, I think this idea that you use media as a way to build a relationship with people and then sell them something they're more inclined to pay for makes a lot of sense. I mean, you think I should get in the chocolate bar business? I mean, that's Mr. Beast, right?
I think it's an interesting exercise that genuinely, like, sometime when Megan's in New York or you're in the Bay, I think you guys should get up on the whiteboard together and be like, I'm 100% serious. I think you guys should get up on the whiteboard together and like, what are the kinds of products and opportunities? Like, you know, I think what you've done in conferences, for example, is like fairly directly extensible off of the media, off of like it's still
part of a media. It's still part of
within the category.
I didn't invent the idea that you pair a newsletter with media with like, events.
I would bet that if we sat here for 5 minutes, we could come up with like a list of 25 things, and some of them would probably require capital for you to do. You know, like it's crazy to me that you don't have a headhunting business. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, their business is similar to mine, where they do that.
It's you could make so much money if you hired a recruiter to work within the Newcomer brand, and like that's not hugely capital intensive because that's like paying a salary and they're probably largely commission based, so you don't really need it up front. But if you then told me like, you know, there's this product I really like. Aaron Harris usot to be a partner at Y Combinator.
Right.
you've probably interviewed him or met him or something.
Yeah, I talked to him.
He now has this product called like the Venture Codex, which I use. It's like a really cool, like, hey, like who should my company raise from? It's sort of in the overall category of like a pitch book or something. But
he doesn't monetize that. He monetizes like an investment banker for fundraising.
Correct. But my point is, like, if you told me that you were going to build a product like that, that's a really interesting product that you have good distribution for.
I've thought about building a data product, but then it's not my expertise. Honestly, my biggest challenge for a lot of these ideas is just like getting a coder excited about, I'm looking for a coder. It's always finding the right.
Haven't you heard we're all coders now?
I know. I've tried. I have vibe codes. I just feel
the
like
challenge
it's
isn't shipping something.
It's
getting it from 70% to 90% and then maintaining it.
Then my time is not well spent there.
Yeah.
It's like I have a long list of things.
And so, by the way, that would be on the list of things where it's like, well, my time as like a creator CEO, my time is too constrained. I don't really have the budget for this. It's kind of like highly exploratory and it's risky. There's maybe a lot of upside to it, but it's hard for me to underwrite with like, a relatively fixed pool today. I could just basically pay the person out of my own pocket. Like that's the case where we come in with the creator fund and say like, hey, show us those 10 experiments that you want to run and we'll give you the money to run all of them. And like something will work as long as we're like disciplined about choosing and prioritizing those experiments. And we find people who are entrepreneurial and ambitious and aspirational enough to actually like do them and have the execution ability to pursue them doggedly. Like that's the business.
And have you stuck to this idea that your investment really needs to be in the person rather than the company?
Yes.
Or you're just worried people will run away from the company or why?
Well, it's because the whole sort of thesis undergirding it is that the distribution is what differentiates it. And, like we want to bet on a person to run all of those experiments. I mean, Mr. Beast is a good example of like where this kind of doesn't work, where like Beast Burgers didn't work. Beast Burgers, like if you had invested in Beast Burgers, you would have lost all your money, even though you totally made the right, this, by the way, goes back to like weird take on important story. You're like, hey, I think this influencer who has like a huge amount of reach is going to like build this really awesome thing. You'd be completely right on a directional basis and completely wrong about the vector of approach. Like,
he doesn't keep them all within the same company. He might not is the risk, I guess.
He now does. There's Beast Co.
They brought in like Jeffrey Hausenbold from SoftBank to be a top executive.
If you say so.
Yeah. Chamath, I think, is a big investor.
I would believe it. I mean, look, we have our issues with Mr. Beast specifically. Like we're more focused on kind of like topic.
Wait, you have your issues or?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the challenge that we see with Mr. Beast is like how much does he have actually like sort of proprietary owned audience and how much is what he's doing basically like kind of running on a treadmill to like hack an algorithm repeatedly. And like, if he stopped doing that, how quickly would his audience
go away?
You're
you're only as good as your last story. Yeah. You have to, consistently.
So
but you don't feel that way about your woodworker, that he still needs to have great woodworking content?
He definitely needs good woodworking content, but we know why people, it's not like, for instance, stunt based. It's not celebrity. So the answer is not like you always need to one up the last thing that you did. That's like a really hard place to get into and like probably burns out over time. Like, I don't think you grow up with people that way. And then that means you have like a shorter shelf life.
All right, Yoni, last question. Who is hustling right now? Like when you look out, like when you think of who's your short list of like startup founders that you think they are hungry, that want to win right now?
Startup founders?
Yeah, startup founders or other people in venture, but startup founders.
Yeah, I mean, look, the startup founders are all of my companies that haven't yet announced rounds. Yeah, obviously. Those are the people that are. Does it
feel like it feels like a quieter time for me? Or I don't know if it's like the foundation model is like looming so large. It just doesn't feel like the new doesn't feel genuinely as urgent to me.
Genuinely, if you spend time with, like, I think, and this is a challenge for you, I think, of being in a media business where like you spend time with people who are on one side of the hill.
Right.
Like the people
want to read about names that they've heard.
For sure. And as a result,
they think they want to read about people they haven't heard of.
Yeah. And the reality is, if you spend time at the earliest stages, when companies don't exist yet, when it's just people, when they're in the early phases of building, when they've launched, the energy right now is unbelievable. Like for all the posturing about like 996 and blah, 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 the real people doing the real work, they just fucking show up and do it. And they're not going to like talk about how hard they're working because they're too busy working. The like level of energy and excitement. I mean, we have this company that just announced a seed round in New York a couple weeks ago called Phoebe, which is like basically building like a network of agents for healthcare labor. And the CEO, Justin, is like unbelievable. And his team is just like the energy in the office is insane. They're like very technical, very focused, very heads down, and they're just like winning every day.
They're like, these are the last 5 years to make wealth
before the permanent underclass. Yeah. Like, I think if you honestly, I would just really encourage you to try and spend time around some of the like less polished, more just like in the thick of it. Basically, when people go from being, you often meet people when they've gone from being founders to being CEOs. And I think if you spend more time around people who are just founders, you will completely reverse course on this idea that like things are quiet or people aren't hustling or there's no energy. Like the amount of energy within our early stage portfolio is unbelievable. When I'm around New York and the founders that I meet who are like, I mean, it's like they're like killing themselves with happiness, you know, because they're so excited about what they're working on. It's like, it's a very, very exciting time that feels really different than when I started my career and people had a level of like maybe caution about entrepreneurship. And I can't even imagine what that felt like compared to 10 years before that. But like, no, I kind of reject the premise of the question. I think there's a lot of people in venture who are lazy for sure, but like.
Right. Yoni, thank you for standing on principle. Thanks for talking politics, playing pundit. Next time, I guess, courtside.
Yeah. All right. Next time, courtside.
All right.
All right, man.
Good to see you. Thanks. Thanks so much for listening to the Newcomer Podcast. I'm Eric Newcomer. Follow us on Substack at newcomer.co. Hope you enjoyed the episode. See you next week.